Today, February 14th, marks another special day in the lives of lovers all over the world and has been commemorated as Lovers' Day or Valentine's Day. As vows are made and renewed in equal measure, though, there are those who believe that love must account for something in order to be of benefit to all parties involved. To this end, we're now being joined by Nimi Akinkugbe, an entrepreneur, personal finance and wealth management expert, as well as founder and chief executive officer of Bestman Games Ltd, a leading African games company. She's here to look at the topic, romance, relationships, finance, and money. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Well, I listened carefully to Tondun's introduction. Love, romance, relationships, finance. What's the connection? Are we saying that there can be no romance without money? As Nigerians say, is money the oxygen of love and romance?
Money is the oxygen of love, but you can't, there's nothing in your life that doesn't have some connection with money. So it's intertwined with everything you're doing, raising a family, relationships, your business, your home, everything. So, it's a leading cause of acrimony and divorce all over the world. Money is like one of the top 3 reasons why couples break up. But people don't discuss it enough, unfortunately. So people date, and there's no talk about their finances. They get married and suddenly find one or the other is in huge debt. So it's just something that we're trying to address and see how people can find a less topic to talk about.
So you're having a conference on this topic of romance and finance, which is incredibly important. People do have to have the hard conversations.
Absolutely.
It comes across as somewhat vulgar to raise money, but it's actually fundamental.
And not on the first date. I mean,
but eventually.
Don't ask how much do you have in your bank account and all that, not on the first date. But when it's getting a bit serious, it's important to. Yeah.
Like you said, it's one of the top 3 causes of divorce. There's money, sex, and in-laws. Those 3 are the marriage killers, or potentially. But I wanted to ask you a question. We all talk about cheating, infidelity, and we talk about emotional infidelity. Is there something such as financial infidelity? Is it wrong to own property without telling your spouse, hide purchases from your spouse?
I really feel that, you know, for a marriage, an ideal marriage, the ideal situation is transparency. I mean, I heard there's a notorious story about a lady who rented her property to her husband. That was the family home. He never knew it was her, it was her property. So he was paying, and she was jacking up the rent every year. And he had to borrow in 1 year to pay the rent. And it was her property. I mean, I don't know if they're together or what happened, but that's just awful. You know, so some people are stashing money away and hiding it. Many times when couples ask me that, or I mean, individuals say, you know, my spouse is a spendthrift, or is going to finish all the family money and so on. I absolutely do have to hide money away for the family's protection. So every case is different. I think it's judgmental to say, you know, everybody should declare everything. I think that is ideal. And I think the best chances of success are where you're transparent and you share information and you communicate. But some people just cannot afford to do that. If your spouse has an abusive condition, is on drugs or is just gambling, then you really need to hide things away for the education of the children, to protect your spouse and all that. So it's difficult to say.
Honestly, because there's some really scary stories out there, but if we look at it in a wider perspective as well, beyond just the finances and the importance of sustainability when it comes to wanting a healthy marriage or a healthy relationship, what else adds to this? What are the important factors that one has to take into consideration in order to have that healthy relationship as opposed to being in a toxic situation?
Well, communication it's almost a cliche now, but that literally is the most fundamental issue. And if people aren't talking and you don't know what your spouse is doing, it's very, very difficult to grow together. It's about having goals. If people, like some couples are totally opposite. Someone's a spendthrift and the other one's a total, almost a miser, you know. So how do you cope? But if a family comes together, a couple comes together on this journey of life, and you sit down and express those goals. What do we want to achieve? You're coming in as individuals, so you both have individual goals as well as joint goals. And to address those jointly, it affects everything you're doing. Where are you going to live? What sort of schools are your kids going to go to? Is someone going to be an entrepreneur while the other one has a regular salary, you know, for a period? Does someone have to stop work? Are your in-laws going to live with you? Are you going to keep funding family members? For how long? These are fundamental things that keep coming up and become an issue. So I think communication is the most critical ingredient in a marriage.
You know, in Africa, you know, there is a contest to relationships, a very strong cultural contest, a situation whereby the man is supposed to provide for everybody. The model is different from what obtains in the Western world.
That's right.
And today is Valentine's Day, the day for love and romance.
The men are getting just socks and handkerchiefs, and we want diamonds and roses. So don't even
That's where I'm going. You know, what advice will you give, you know, these young people who are so excited? This Valentine's Day every year is a source of enormous stress and anxiety for a lot of men. You know, you are supposed to go and look for something expensive. Would you like to advise? Would you like to advise, you know, people today, you know, who will be under pressure to go to expensive restaurants and spend money that they don't have?
You're with the wrong person.
Honestly, you're with the wrong person. If
you don't have to. It doesn't have to be that expensive. But it's the thought that counts. I mean, you need to. I mean, I'm waiting for my present. I mean, there's pressure. There's pressure. There's just no way. And this is after 34 years. I'm waiting. I mind. I must have a present. It might be a silly day. It might be irrelevant. Just do it. Just get something. And
this
yes,
is what I'm talking about.
So I'm not the right person.
Women put us under pressure.
No, it doesn't have to be ruinously expensive. It just has to be
It's the thought of flowers.
It's the thought that counts.
Yes, it's the thought that counts. Something nice. But a friend of mine said flowers. You must be kidding. I need a designer handbag.
All your mates are giving their wives cars on Valentine's Day.
Oh, goodness.
You are bringing a miserable bottle of perfume. How do we deal with the situation?
No, but there is a fundamental issue here. I find us one of the most materialistic and ostentatious societies in the world.
Yes.
Okay, so it's intense. The pressure is intense. Social media doesn't help because you can see everybody showing a side that they want you to see. So the pressure is really intense, especially for young couples. It comes down to seeing where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? What are your goals? And try to work towards that. I find that when you're working towards important goals, it helps you. You're less able. You know, you're less forced into being pressurized into doing things. But if you earn 200,000 naira a month and your girlfriend wants a Hermes handbag, then maybe you've got the wrong girlfriend. Yeah. Okay, but if you're going to spend your annual salary on the handbag for one day, then there's a problem with the relationship. Everyone's got to sort of find who they should be with and look at it that way, because otherwise the pressure is intense. Men are forced into doing all kinds of things just to try to cater to this insatiable appetite for material things and keeping up with everybody else. Every single day, everybody's trying. Your children must go to this school because everybody else's child's going to this school. You've got to drive this sort of car. You've got to live in this neighborhood. You can't afford this neighborhood. You know, so it's overwhelming, and it's something that we've just got to try to teach our children, teach our young adults, so that they don't get caught up, because it leads to horrific debt, it leads to bankruptcy, and it leads to breakups. Yeah.
This is crucial. Well, another issue I wanted to raise, coming off of what you said about men being expected to be the provider, is a financial imbalance in a relationship. Sometimes the man is a lot richer than the woman, but nowadays increasingly we find that it's the opposite. And it creates some kind of resentment in the couple where the person with more money feels entitled to take control.
The power over everything.
How do you address that imbalance?
It's particularly difficult where it's the woman is the primary breadwinner, simply because of what he described as a very patriotic society where it was seen that you're taken care of by the male members of the family, your father, your brothers, that sort of thing. It's changing. I'm quite astonished at the number of women who are actually the ones paying the rent, the school fees, and the major expenses in the family. But no matter how much a woman is earning, you know, that she's got to be wise. You're an African woman. That is not derogatory. You've just got to know that the way it's seen in our culture, there's a male member of the family, and in our society, that is the head of the household. So you might be a hotshot banker, entrepreneur, and so on. There are certain expectations, societal expectations, as painful as it might be. And it really, the time when it really digs in is the men will say the woman doesn't give them any more respect because she's paying the bills. So she's lost that value that we hold as African women. And it's not a weakness. I don't see it as a weakness. So I've had young women I've been counseling who say, well, I have enough money to buy an air ticket and travel, so why do I have to ask him? She has the money. Of course you have the money to, you can buy a car. So you just drive in with your brand new car and park it in the house.
Without a
prior conversation. Yes, so it's about wisdom and knowing that this is where we're from. It takes time for the whole society to change its norms. But that doesn't mean out of respect you should just have a major purchase or just say, oh, I'm traveling tomorrow without consulting. Yes, you can afford it. It's not about the money. It's about respect. It's about resentment and making someone feel disempowered in a way.
Yeah. And I think as well there's also a difference as well between holding on to values, culture, and understanding them, and the general oppression of women that we see in society as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get them mixed up and get them misconstrued. So if we can also break that down, that would also be good, right? Because sometimes one shifts into the other. This idea of African women means this, or African women means that, whereas it does not necessarily translate to oppression and disrespect. And that's what we see in a lot of relationships today.
Yes, it's very, very difficult. So in the Christian faith, you talk about submission. I put out a post once and I was talking about, my mother always said, no matter how powerful or wealthy you ever become, always remember that your husband is the head of your household. That was not disempowering. I found that quite empowering, actually. And I'm very, very conscious of who is in charge of my household. I have my strengths. He has his strengths, and it's a team. But I got a lot of mail from women who were horrified that I said that. So they thought submission is being subservient. So there's got to be a whole reorientation. It's not about you being the lesser being. It's about teamwork. And there's a leader in a team, and you're supporting, you're equal partners, but in a supportive relationship. So it's something that is, as women are getting more educated and more empowered and having so much more money and being very exposed, especially in terms of the Western culture, we're losing a lot of our traditional African values, which have a lot of importance and strength. So, I mean, I just heard recently that the divorce rate, the queue for divorce at our High Court is absolutely staggering.
It is.
Mm-hmm. People are getting married today and being divorced by Christmas, you know. So it's a fundamental conversation that's going to come from our culture, our mothers, because our mothers were very powerful women, but somehow they managed to strike that balance. I'm not sure how they did it.
I'll tell you why. What my theory is exactly going back to what Dr. Abati said. There was a hierarchy in the home and was accepted. The man was a provider, and that's how it went. Nowadays,
but the women were earning even then.
They were earning, but the man was the main provider. Okay. Nowadays, what we see corruption, what is done to the economy. We think, I'm sure somebody like you know so much about the economy. We see it in all these like grand economy writ large. We don't understand the way it affects every single thing, even to the smallest units of society, the family. Yeah. The economy has attacked and destroyed so many Nigerian marriages. This is what causes a lot of domestic violence. Yes, a man that cannot do what his father did. Yes, back in the day, a Peugeot was 7,000 naira. Now, trying to buy a decent car, brand new, is completely out of the reach of most people. So it causes infidelity, causes domestic violence, and it's attacking the fabric of our society.
That's the oppression of women I was then talking about when I said that switchover. But yeah.
Well, let's take a short commercial break. When we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still with us in our Lagos studio is Nimi Akinkugbe, an entrepreneur, personal finance and wealth management expert, as well as founder and chief executive officer of Bestman Games Ltd, a leading African games company. Now, before we went on break, we had talked about communication and openness and culture and the connection between romance and finance. But let me take you back to the issue about communication and openness, which you say is the ideal situation. Would you recommend something different in terms of the nature of the relationship? And by this, I mean that in Africa, we have some relationships that are monogamous. You have just one man, one wife, as T.M. Aluko wrote. In some other contexts, you have polygamous relationships. One man, 4 wives. One man, 4 plus 12. Okay, and this is not unusual in Africa. So what kind of openness can you have in a polygamous relationship?
Now that's a tricky one. But I've got quite accustomed to my Muslim friends, for example, and the equality with which they treat their spouses is really outstanding. The ones that I've known, where they have 4 wives and everything, the finances are matched evenly, the property is matched evenly. Of course, if you've got 22 girlfriends and you've got a main wife, I don't expect you to tell the girlfriends all about the money you've got stashed away. But your wife, the mother of your children, deserves respect, financial respect, and you've got to provide for them. And even if you're not going to communicate about it, you must cater for them in your estate planning. Okay, so it's very, very important that you have children and you have a spouse, and you do ensure that your documentation, should anything happen to you, caters to those people, your beneficiaries, your heirs, and so on. But in terms of telling all your relationships about all the money that there is, I think it might be a bit foolhardy to do that.
Because we do have this culture of secrecy. Again, we see it at the national level, and it plays into every aspect. When we have our political office holders reluctant to declare their assets because you don't want people to know what you have or what you don't have.
You don't know what you've told them at home that you have.
Yes, exactly. And it works the same way in a marriage. So how do we go about breaking that culture of silence?
It'll take time. It'll take time, and as we talk, it's been a taboo for such a long time. We're just beginning to talk about money. Couples, we've got our event oversubscribed with couples wanting to come and learn about money and talk about things. So this is a whole new area, because people have found that it's a deal breaker. It's one of the most difficult aspects of marriage. So couples that are trying to ensure that they can move forward together and succeed are doing this more and more. It'll take time because of the whole cultural baggage we carry. It'll take a long time for that to happen, definitely.
And now as well, let's also speak about the broader picture when it comes to Valentine's Day. Of course, it's a huge celebration for us here. I think all week, Tundun, Dr. Abati and I have been speaking about how it's so integral and it's so deep-rooted in what we celebrate in Nigeria. And it's different all around the world, etc. But when you look back to the original stories of Saint Valentine, who he was, and you hear about the first letter that was ever written in 1477, when basically I believe there was a king who didn't want marriages to exist anymore because he felt like it made the men soldiers less powerful, and he needed them to be more powerful for war, etc. And Saint Valentine wanted marriages to exist, and etc., etc., etc. That's just one myth. But a lot of people see this day as an important day for also giving back to society and spreading the love beyond romance and relationships. What's your take?
Oh, I think that's so important. Not just about your significant other or your siblings, your parents. I think it's just such a wonderful opportunity to just give. And giving does not mean monetary. It's about doing things, being there, calling people, being kind, just making that extra effort, which we should ideally be doing every day, but we just don't. So times like this just make you think about that. Someone's going through something. It's a lovely time to just call them or send them a little gift or take them out for a meal. So it's not, and this environment, I've got a few single friends who say the pressure is horrific when you're single. It's like, something's wrong with you, or it's Valentine's Day and nobody is sending you something. It's ridiculous.
Completely is wrong with you.
Completely ridiculous. So people are under that sort of intense pressure. And so I would say, girlfriends, celebrate your girlfriends.
Valentine.
Just have a great time. And don't give too much focus on that other, the male-female relationship. I think it's just a day of showing love and kindness and care for your family, your parents, your parents-in-law. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Well, when we talk about finance and relationship and romance, we assume, let's say in principle, 2 persons involved, or in a polygamous setup, more people involved.
Not 12, I hope.
Well, I hope you were around when one gentleman stood up in the National Assembly on the floor of the House of Reps and asked his 4 wives to stand up to be paraded. Yeah. And he said, look, I have 4 wives. Please stand up one by one. And I have 27 children at home. And this is to show you that I'm not just powerful on the floor of the House of Reps. I'm also a very powerful man at home.
And the 4 wives stood up.
Oh, they stood up.
It was the most shocking thing I've seen.
But I want to bring in the part about the extended family. Yeah. It's not just a man and his wife or his wives. Yeah. Usually, the average family is under pressure from cousins, some of them third-generation cousins. Some of them, the only connection is that maybe, your mom and their father or their uncle, whatever, met at some point in life. How do you deal with that? Because you hear many families saying the pressure from the extended family is just too much. You are expected to sponsor people's marriages. Yeah. After 9 months, people come to you, my wife has just put to bed, come and help me pay hospital bills.
No, they say your wife has just put to bed.
Okay. Even when you are not responsible for the pregnancy. Yes. How do you deal with all of that?
It's a major, major one. And as she said, it's one of the deal breakers as well. And this is one of the things that should be discussed in the conversation before the wedding, if possible. Because people might just move into your house. So just having a chat about how many relations can live with you, how far do you go? You are not Father Christmas. You have your goals, which you've got to achieve as your own unitary family. Extended family is important. And I really admire the extended family because I really believe it's our own social security system. But it is abused. It's abused. So you'll have, I know someone right now whose brother is so totally entitled. Her husband has been paying his school fees. He can't even be bothered to study for the exams and so on. How long do you continue to do that for? There's got to be a conversation. Of course, you support people. And I find the better ways of support. I had a counseling session with a couple yesterday. Insurance. Get everybody insurance. So because of that, you don't have to keep paying these medical bills with cash. Your parents are getting on. Every minute they're coming to you for cash. Put some family plans in place. That will help a lot. Education. But if you just keep doling out money, you create a sense of dependency that will never leave. There's got to be a time frame. I'm doing this for a season. Of course, if there are emergencies, you're going to have to dole out money. But you've got to try to put it within a framework and make it that you are helping people to become independent as opposed to making them just live this life of dependency that you will always be there to just send money when they need it. There are a lot of entitled people and they just won't stop.
This is important. I think Oprah Winfrey, she calls it the black tax. That it's a special tax that black people pay. You have your family as your dependents, parasites, basically, for the rest of your life. It's really unfortunate. Wow. But I want to talk about the fact that most of us have no clue about money. We think in terms of, we earn a certain amount, I'm going to save a bit, and then from there, I'll go. But then we don't know about investing. Yes. We don't know healthy spending habits. You have your book, Personal Finance, the 80% of Personal Finance, so please, could you talk around that subject?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we do. It's about just trying to get people to understand the workings of money. Sadly, it isn't in the curriculum at school. It should be in your maths class. That's what maths should be. But what is wonderful is Lagos State Ministry of Education has invited us to take financial literacy into the schools as an extracurricular activity. That's what we're doing in the public schools. I went into one of the schools in Ajegunle and I had my silly middle-class hat on and I asked the dumbest question ever. I said, how many of you have an allowance from your parents? I mean, how do you ask that?
I just choked.
Yes, I mean, then I suddenly, I saw everyone's face and I recovered quickly. You'll be impressed. I recovered. So I said, how many of you earn? Every single one of them earned.
Yeah. Wow.
Every one of them earned. They're selling before school. They're doing things. They're entrepreneurs. Phenomenal. And in one term, they've all saved. So we're tracking their saving. They've got piggy banks. It gets to a particular level. They put it in the open bank accounts. It's just absolutely incredible what we've seen in terms of the industry and when they get to understand what it is to start saving towards particular goals. They've all got goals. And we've done about 63 schools last year. We hope to do up to 10,000 children this year. So before they leave school, because there's such a huge unemployment problem, it's nice that people come out of school with some basic knowledge. None of us knew all this.
It is crucial.
With just some basic knowledge about how to manage their money, how to save, how to invest, how to give, just how to work hard to earn. So that's been one of the greatest things that we're enjoying.
Yeah, and this is why cultures like the Jewish people with bar mitzvahs and how they go about raising their kids on their children's 13th birthday, the only thing you're giving that child is money.
Oh, really?
And literally they take their child from day one through the process of knowing the value of money, how to save, how to spend, and maybe that's why Jewish people are so powerful today.
That's why.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how cultures like that can also have an effect.
Is money they're given.
You can only, my aunt took my little cousin to her cousin's bar mitzvah and didn't come with anything. And apparently the parents messaged after to say, oh, just checking if the nanny stole the money that you left. And she was like, no, I didn't actually bring anything. You can only bring money to a bar mitzvah.
And how old are the children when they have
13 years old, yeah. So it's very interesting. But I wanted to go back to marriage and what we first spoke about very quickly. We only have about a minute left. And the importance of healthy marriages. How important would you say marriage consulting is for couples who want to get married before they actually do?
I think it is absolutely vital. And the churches do a good job with that, but it needs much more. And I do believe the Muslims also have premarital counselling session. It is brilliant. Some of them are very, very good. What I'm trying to do is see how they can put in the financial piece in there, because right now there isn't the financial piece.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Happy Valentine's
Day.
I hope you get your gift soon.
Or when you get your gift, we look forward to knowing what it is.
There'll be a card.